nothing at all if we do not have a formal treaty that is that we feel obliged to protect somebody, such as, for example, the NATO treaty. We feel obliged, and have restated that fact, that we would defend even 1 inch of Poland, member of NATO, or the 3 Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, if they were invaded, and to the others that have joined NATO, those we would defend. Ukraine has learned the hard way that the word of the United States is not something which can be depended on short of a formal treaty. And that's something for Taiwan to keep in mind. Meanwhile, almost halfway around the world, Taiwan, of course, faces the very definite threat of the Chinese coming in and taking that island nation. And again, we don't have a formal treaty as such. In fact, it is a situation that is starkly reminiscent of what we have here with Ukraine, except, of course, the population disparity is much, much greater with China versus Taiwan as opposed to Russia versus Ukraine. On the other hand, of course, there is no direct land route for the huge People's Republic, People's Liberation Army, I should say, that's what they call it, liberation, typical Orwellian speak that these regimes use. It's an army that has never been used to liberate anything. But again, to get to Taiwan, you can't just cross over land boundaries. You have to actually have a seaborne invasion. Now then, that's not easy to do. Just to look at the Taiwan situation, amphibious landings have their own inherent difficulties. And for one thing, they are slower. And for another thing, the troops that are coming in must do so in conveyances that are often easy targets. So again, we're talking about a Chinese effort that would be subject to considerable casualties. But again, the Chinese have absolutely never worried about casualty totals. And to get back at Taiwan, this regime of President Xi would happily lose hundreds of thousands of their own troops if that's what it came to. So the lesson seems pretty clear. That if you don't have a formal treaty with the United States, our word doesn't mean much of anything. And that's why this is really important. People have said, well, what happened in Ukraine really mattered. It does as a matter of credibility. And again, we should not be issuing statements such as we made coming out of the agreement signed in 1991, handing over those Ukrainian nukes to Russia, if we have no intention of backing them up, and I don't think we ever had any intention of backing them up, we should not sign such agreements. They just make us look weak. If we don't have it backed up by the full force of a treaty, then we shouldn't make deals we're not prepared to actually support. The optics are terrible. You promised to guarantee our territorial integrity. Well, yes, we did, but we didn't really mean it. And that's a message I can guarantee you that every country in the path of a resurgent Russia looking west, and of every nation in Asia looking in any direction from China, that message is very clear. The message from Beijing is, you can see how much you can trust the United States, and their word doesn't mean anything. You're as good as ours. Just thoughts here, for what it's worth. On the Jim Bohannon Show tonight, as again we await just what happens in Ukraine and some clarification therein on the Jim Bohannon.
Take a step toward bringing our country